Hello, welcome to today's immigration tidbit. So have you heard about the EB-1 category? What is that? How does it apply? And might you be able to get the green card that way? Okay, well, first of all, EB stands for employment based, okay? And there's lots of different categories under EB. There's EB-1, EB-2, EB-3, EB-4, and EB-5. But today, we're going to talk in general terms about the EB-1. Okay, that is the cream of the crop, the Primo. That's the one where if you can qualify, you want to get in. That's the one that I don't believe has ever had a waiting time for the visa to become available. Okay, and given that I said that, that's a big thing. I mean, the EB-5, where you need $1 million to invest, basically, or more now. If you're from, India and China, you're waiting a long time for the visa number to become current, let alone the adjudication. So if you can get under an EB-1, if you can make it so you might qualify, then the EB-1 is the way to go, period. Now, some people say, well, can I do an EB-1 and possibly an EB-2 at the same time? And the answer is yes. Okay, it's like two horses going around the track. The first one to the finish line wins. So the EB-1 team will adjudicate your EB-1, the EB-2 team will adjudicate your EB-2, and everything that's involved with that. So let's talk about EB-1s. There are 3 different kinds of EB-1s. There's extraordinary alien, outstanding researchers, and multinational managers. That's it. Okay, that's what it all comes down to. And so what are each of those? Okay, so the first one, extraordinary alien petition. Okay, that's when you are at the very top of your field. And that's when you can show that you meet several of the criteria that they put forth, and then some, and that you can convince immigration you're at the very top of your game. And if so, you don't need to have a sponsor. It's a self-petition. It's not petitioned by a company on your behalf like most of the other employment petitions are. Rather, it is you submitting this petition to show why you are an EB-1A category, okay? Now, I've had a lot of people over the last 3 decades, they'll say, well, I meet 3 of the 10, so therefore I'm in, and I am an EB-1A, and therefore should get my green card. And it doesn't work like that. Okay, it just does not work like that. They do give 10 different categories, of which you, at a minimum, need to fall under 3 of them. But whether you fall under any one of the 3 is a matter of argument and debatable, and it's on the discretion of the officer as to whether or not you really do. And then even if you meet 3 of the 10, that does not mean you are automatically EB-1A material. That's the reality. The arguments, the documents, the evidence, the legal brief, all of that has to go to the prime target that you are at the very top of your field, and that's why you should be granted the EB-1A category. So you've got to get out of your mind that if you happen to think that you fall under 3 of the categories, you're in, and no problem. Okay? I've also had people in the past who think just because they got a PhD that they are EB-1A material, and that by itself is not the case. Okay? I mean, obviously we all know it's very difficult to get a PhD, and it takes lots of years and so forth, but that doesn't mean you're at the top of your field. Okay, in some respects, once you get the PhD, you're kind of just at the entry level at that part of the field. So it all depends. It's all a matter of arguing. Okay, you got to be creative, which is why you get an attorney to do it. So that's that. Now the question becomes, what is the top of your field? By the way, I'm on my mobile bike today. So the top of the field, the trick here is to narrow your field, okay? And that gets you a higher chance of getting the EB-1A approved. So for example, let's just say engineer, okay? If you say you are the top engineer, well, that's going to be really hard to prove. It's a very broad category, and you will have a very difficult time proving you're at the top of your field. The competition's immense. So we narrow it. Let's say you're an aeronautical engineer. Okay, that's good. At least now you've kicked out the competition, all the mechanical engineers and the civil engineers and the biomedical engineers. Now you're dealing just with aeronautical engineers. But still it's too broad. Okay, so let's say you're an aeronautical engineer that you work on the electrical navigation systems of the, Airbus A300. And let's say you are an absolute expert in the electrical aeronautical engineering capabilities of the A300 and everything to do with it. That is narrow enough to be able to show that maybe you are an EB-1A in that category. Do you see how we really narrowed down? I mean, you've just kicked out 99.9% of every engineer anywhere because they don't have nothing to do with, that type of system on that type of plane, okay? So that's how you do that. So once you submit the EB-1A, you can also do it through premium processing. All of the EB-1s can be done through premium processing, which, by the way, the fees now, the fees just to file it are $3,000. Okay, so if you want to do an EB-1A premium processing, you better have an extra $3,000 just to give immigration. Okay, that's minus all the other fees. Okay, now the EB-1B deals with outstanding researchers and professors. This is a relatively small category. What can I say? If you have a tenured position at a university and you can show that you're an outstanding professor, this one's for you. But let's move on to EB-1C. Okay, EB-1C, multinational manager visa. That one is doable for a lot of people, but they just don't know about it. Okay, that's the fact. They just don't know about it. You wouldn't believe how many times people come to me and they say, okay, I don't really have $1.3 million, but I'll find a way to get it. I'll go through all the hurdles to get the EB-5. We'll wait years for it to become current. And, I'll keep my money tied up in this thing for years and years and years. Might get lost, whatever. And then at the end, it won't even be a real green card for the EB-5. It'll be a conditional green card, of which you have to file a petition to remove the conditional residency, which takes a long time. So let's talk about the EB-1C. Why am I bringing that up? Well, a lot of times people with money, people who would have invested in a new business in the U.S. for green card purposes, they can do the EB-1C, and it is so much nicer than the EB-5. Okay, so what are the requirements? That's the multinational manager one, and it's just what it says. You are a manager of a company outside the U.S., and you're going to then be also a manager of a company inside the U.S., whether there's already a division of where you work inside the U.S., whether you buy a division, whether you buy a company that has nothing to do with what you're doing, but it's still you're going to manage it. The EB-1C, if you have a company outside the U.S. and you're working at that company, then that is the one that you need to come in on, is the EB-1C, okay? And you, of course, need to keep the company running outside. You need to start or continue a company on the inside, and the inside being of the U.S. And the amount, because people always say, well, okay, well, how much do I have to invest? The amount is far less than the 1.3 million for the EB-5, far less. And it can be argued as regarding how much you invest as to why maybe it's so small and why you don't need any more type thing. There's no minimum or maximum for the EB-1C. I've done a lot of EB-1Cs where they only invested like $25,000, $50,000 in the company in the US, and that was sufficient. Okay, I'm not saying that works all the time, but that would have been sufficient. And so, given that, the way to proceed forward with the EB-1C is you don't need a lot of money, nothing like the EB-5, and then if it gets approved, there's no visa waiting, at least as of now, for the visa to become current. And if you get approved, it's a real green card, not a conditional one. Meaning once you get it, you got it. You don't have to wait, the 2 years to do the petition to remove the conditional residency and all the other rigmarole that happens with the EB-5. The EB-1C 1,000 times over is preferable than the EB-5 if you can do it. Okay? So for all those entrepreneurs out there who own their own businesses or work at a company that's big enough that already has a branch in the US and you're of a managerial capacity or executive capacity already, then you can come in to the US on the EB-1C on the green card. And a lot of times the path is first the L1. You do the L1 and then later you switch to the EB-1C. Okay? And again, you can do this all premium processing. So there you go. There is the rundown, the summary of the EB-1s. And believe me, it was a summary. I mean, I could go into so much more detail, but hopefully you got an idea of what they are, and maybe you or someone you know might be able to fit under it, because if you can get the green card in a manner that there's no visa waiting, there's no conditional green card, there's no 1.3 million to invest, and make it happen, then that by far is the preferable way that you would want to go. Okay.